The Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis duo are one of the best and most prolific producers in music. Largely known for their longtime affiliation with Janet Jackson, the duo also were the primary producers behind most of the hits Alexander O'Neal, Cherrelle, or the SOS Band ever had. They also were produced for such diverse acts as The Human League, Sounds of Blackness, and Shabba Ranks. However, prior to becoming big-time producers, the duo were musicians who found themselves as members of Prince's band. Prince, of course, needs no introduction, but we'll give him a small one anyway. Prince was a talented musician who excelled at playing numerous instruments and was known for doing everything on his albums, from lead vocals to doing his own background vocals to playing the guitar or keyboards to producing the whole thing. After working with Jam and Lewis for a while, however, Prince fired both of them at the same time, and it had absolutely nothing to do with poor performance, being late, or anything like that. So why did Prince fire Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis? That's what we're here to talk about. Jimmy Jam and Prince had known each other since junior high school. They met while in the same piano class, which was really just a room full of keyboards. A little while later, they were in opposing bands, with Prince in a group called Graham Central, along with Andre Cymone and Morris Day, while Jimmy Jam was in another band. Around this time, Prince did a song with Morris Day called Party Up. In relation to the song, Prince gave Morris two options. Number one, he could either take the credit on the song and get paid for that, or number two, Prince could set him up with a band of his own. Morris chose number two, the band. Around that same time, Andre Cymone, Prince's bass player, was leaving the group. Prince asked Terry Lewis to replace him, and Terry agreed to do it. About a month later, Morris Day asked Terry to be his bass player. Terry told Morris that he'd already agreed to do the same gig with Prince. Morris asked him which one he'd rather do. Terry was more friendly with Morris, so he chose that gig instead. Along with Terry, at Morris Day's urging, he brought Alexander O'Neal, who was the lead singer, and Jelly Bean Johnson, who was the drummer. Lewis was also trying to get Jimmy Jam to join the band, play the keyboards, and Jam agreed to do it. This group had a meeting with Prince, which is where the infamous Alexander O'Neal meeting took place. We'll talk about that another time, but the gist of it is that O'Neal was so abrasive to Prince that Prince decided to fire him and replace him as the lead singer with Morris Day. Morris became the new lead, and the group was now called The Time, which is a derivative of Flight Time, which would eventually also be the name of Jam and Lewis's production company. In the early days of the group, Prince did all the music. While Jam and Lewis were okay with that, they also wanted to get out and write and produce for other people. Making more money was one of their primary motivators, because while on tour, they were only making about $150 a week. For perspective, that's about $467 in today's money. In 1982, Prince's tour had 4 off days in between shows while in New York. While there, Jam and Lewis got a call from Clarence Avant, the owner of Taboo Records. He wanted them to produce the SOS Band, one of the groups on his label. Thinking that they had plenty of time to get to produce SOS and get to the next show in San Antonio, they agreed to doing the production. The duo flew down to Atlanta, and the production went off without a hitch. However, they didn't count on Mother Nature having a say on what would happen next. The night they were supposed to leave Atlanta to go to San Antonio for the next show, it snowed in Atlanta. While it was by no means a snowstorm, in the South it was enough to shut down the airport, which means they had no way of making it to San Antonio on time for the show. For those of you who may be thinking, why didn't they just drive to the show? Atlanta to San Antonio is a 1,000-mile, 14-hour drive away, so that wouldn't have worked either. They missed the show in San Antonio. To take their place, Prince played their instruments off stage, and Terry's brother Jerome stood in Terry's place and pretended to be Terry. No one could tell the difference. When they caught up to the tour at the next show, Prince fined them $3,000 for missing the previous show. This was crazy to them, as remember, we said earlier they were only making $150 a show. Now, also remember, Prince had a rule about producing outside acts while you were working for him. So Jam and Lewis were afraid that he'd find out that they'd done just that with the SOS band. However, everybody assumed that they'd gone to Atlanta chasing after women. They gladly played into this narrative, and Prince had no idea what they were really up to. This is the early 1980s, so at that time, there was no internet, there was no Twitter or Instagram or anything that would advertise what they'd been up to. However, there was a magazine called Billboard that discussed things pertaining to the music scene. And everybody in Jam and Lewis's circle read Billboard magazine, including you-know-who, Prince. One day, the duo was horrified when they saw a picture of themselves in Billboard magazine. They were posing next to the SOS band, and not only were there pictures, there was also an article discussing how the duo was producing the SOS band. Uh-oh. They ran around frantically, trying to keep copies of the magazine away from Prince so he wouldn't see the article. That worked for a little while, but of course eventually he saw it. One day the following summer, Jam and Lewis got called in by Prince to come to the Sunset Sound Studio for what they thought was going to be work on a time recording. Prior to being called in by Prince, they had booked studio time to work on mixing some SOS band music at a different studio. Instead of working in the studio when they got to Sunset Sound, they went to a meeting with Prince, Morris Day, and Jesse Johnson instead. Prince then revealed that he actually had called them in because he found out about what they'd done with the SOS band. He also went on to fire them because they produced outside acts and broke his rule. Terry tried to reason with Prince. That's to no avail. Jam and Lewis walked away stunned by the firing. However, they still went to Larrabee Studios to complete the mixing they'd scheduled themselves to do earlier before they'd been blindsided by Prince's meeting/firing. When they got to the studio, Steve Hodge, the sound engineer at Larrabee, took one look at their faces and he knew something was wrong. He asked the guys what was bothering them. Jam and Lewis told him they'd just been fired from the time by Prince. Hodge told them not to worry about being fired. Why? Why would he say that? This is why. He'd already started mixing the song they came to work on, and he liked what he heard. He told them not to worry about being fired because the song they were working on was going to be a smash. The song, it was Just Be Good to Me by the SOS band, and Hodge was absolutely right. The song wound up being a smash. And the rest is history. So there it is. The duo was off and running towards becoming some of the biggest producers in the business. They go on to produce hits like Alexander O'Neal's Innocent, Saturday Love by Alexander O'Neal and Sherelle, Tender Love by the Force MDs, Nasty and Let's Wait a While by Jan Jackson, and New Edition's Can You Stand the Rain, and many more. So now you know why Prince fired Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. You also found out why firing Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis turned out to be, in their words, a freeing and not a firing. Sometimes getting fired on your day off can wind up being a good thing. We hope you enjoyed this dive into why Prince fired Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Be sure to come back to check out more videos. See you soon.